If I suggest you wake up every morning in a comfortable bed, swallow a well-balanced breakfast, have a hot and comforting drink to savor at the edge of a window, or wrap in a plaid well hot. If I propose you to live in a country that bases its economy on trust, openness and flexibility, a country in which the government generously accepts to finance your student path or that of your children for any specialization. If I finally suggest you to feel safe, to leave your bag without a lock in front of your workspace, to leave your smartphone on your table in town without fear of being robbed, what would you say to me? Well, you might say to me, you can stop here, young man. I know that you are talking about Denmark and its Jäger stuff, and you will be perfectly right. It will be more than 5 years since we turn our eyes toward this country that seems to have found a miracle recipe to live in happiness. Whether in the fields of economics, politics, education, or even ecology, it has become natural to cite our Viking neighbors as an example. My name is Simon. I'm a 23 years old French student and I'm about to finish my student pass in one of the top French business schools. In a few months, I will have to find a job in the cinema sector that might be my future reality for the next years. That is why I ask myself questions. If Denmark seems to be a so pleasant place to work, a country with a prosperous economy where employment is not lacking, what about its cinema sector? Well, it is quite something too. The history of Danish cinema begins in 1897. He knows a golden age between 1909 and 1914 with success comparable to Hollywood ones. Danish cinema has always been characterized by the thorough research of the artistic. The technical quality of the photography of their film has always impressed the European public. In addition, the Danish comedy became famous in 1921 with this joke that will surely remind you something. Danish cinema has refined throughout the years in terms of writing and directing to create eventually the Danish realisms, which will sell tickets till the 80s. In 1983, the whole world stared at Denmark with the birth of a great name, Lars von Trier, and his hugely successful Element of Crime. The controversial director will feed the 90s of movies such as Breaking the Waves, The Idiots, or Dancer in the Dark. These creations culminated in the mid-90s with the appearance of a real cinematographic movement, the Dogma 95, which breaks with the technical cleanliness and the irreproachable directing of the previous decades. This movement was intended to promote amateurism and to give access to cinema for all. One of the most emblematic examples of this movement was Thomas Vinterberg's Festen. Since the 21st century, many Danish filmmakers have made their place in the world. Lars von Trier obviously, but also Thomas Vinterberg with American productions. Also, Susan Bayer is well known since 2011 with her Golden Globe and her Oscar for Best Foreign Film called Revenge, and she's still multiplying the success. Another very important Danish director of her time, an artist experimenting with another kind of cinema, Nicolas Winding Refn. Having started with small Danish films such as the Pusher trilogy, whose impact was significant, he then continued with English-language films like his compatriots and gave us Drive with Ryan Gosling. Danish cinema has always had a global impact on viewers and on productions. It remains one of the most productive cinema in terms of movies, a sort of nursery of talents whose international demand continues to grow, a diversified cinema which had crossed many genres, a cinema that has always been successfully renewed and succeeds in remaining innovative, but whose main protagonists tend to migrate. Even the economic situation of the Danish film industry remains an object of study. Indeed, for a country with 5.8 million inhabitants, Danish productions fill in mass the dark rooms. This is reflected in the Danish Film Institute 2019 reports. 3.7 million admissions to Danish films, 2.2 million admissions per capita. These numbers are quite unique in Europe. So it seemed that Denmark is the perfect place to live and to make films, right? But why? And how? If I learn from them, would I be able to bring this recipe in my country? Would I be able to import this successful process in my future company? Would I be able to live the Danish dream? And does the Dansk and Drome really exist? Well, let's find out. Our research begins with a meeting at the biggest production and distribution company in Denmark. A company which was here at the very beginning, Nordisk Film.
Well, Nordisk Film is a part of the Egmont Group, which is a pan-Nordic entertainment conglomerate, you could actually say that. It's a big media house with many different aspects of the media society, TV stations, publishing, and of course movies, which Nordisk Film is a part of. I like the Egmont. It's actually Egmont has this tagline that says we bring stories to life, and I really like that idea with Nordisk Film. It's the oldest film company in the world. It's definitely the oldest film company in Scandinavia. We have been producing films since 1906, so it has a really long tradition of quality storytelling, but storytelling that has always been very audience focused. It's very much about finding someone who wants to see the stories that you also tell. I'm not afraid to say this, there's a commercial aspect to it. Of course, Nordisk Film is a privately owned company, so it's in the end it's about, you know, also returning a profit for the owners. But we do that in a long-term strategy of being a huge part of the Danish movie society. Also taking up, of course, very commercial films, launching, distributing, producing very commercial films, but also taking care of the new talent.
Indeed, Nordisk Film produces and distributes the biggest release each year in Denmark. This situation allows the company to act as a huge player in the sector and to develop all kinds of projects, the big ones, as the small ones, and especially the Danish ones. But the Danish cinema industry is also funded and helped for many years by the action of the Danish Film Institute.
We are acting in reference to a film law. We have a film law in Denmark. It talks about film as an art form, film as culture, and cinema culture. So this is what we do. This is our aim. I think we have three kind of strategic goals at the moment. One is to increase the cultural impact of Danish cinema. Second is to kind of follow the digital transformation. And the third one is diversity. Not diversity in terms of representation, or only representation as a means. It's diversity in terms of the films. Targeting different groups, different ways of storytelling, try to be as diverse as you can in the output. So these are the three kind of strategic goals right now, and I think, what is the really important thing here is that we strive to have, that Danish film have cultural impact, that these films, and by cultural impact we mean that the films we fund and produce in this country have to be, relevant for the audience. They have to deal with issues that are urgent for the audience. We need to challenge the audience on these issues. We need to, create discussion about these issues. But, first of all, we have to address things that are important in people's lives. So this is what we try to do, and I think we are trying to strengthen and increase the cultural impact, but I think it's not a new strategic goal. It's more or less been what created kind of the new wave of Danish cinema for the last 30 years. A need for directors and scriptwriters to be important for the audience. If you look right now, last Thursday, a film called Queen of Hearts premiered. This is a film that deals with pretty much with the whole Me Too thing.
Okay.
But in a very unusual way, because the main character is a perpetrator, and the perpetrator is not a man but a woman.
Okay.
So I think this is a very original way to be kind of have cultural impact, to address a very urgent issue. Another film, the best-selling films for the last, I think it's pretty much 30 years in Denmark,
Okay.
is an animation film in the cinemas right now called Squatted Ninja.
Okay.
It deals with what is it called? Harassment in schools.
Okay. Bullying.
Kids harassing each other.
Okay.
It's a very important issue. It's going on in every school, and I think this is another quite different way to have cultural impact. To address something that's important in people's lives. So these are just two examples, but I think you can pretty much go back to the last 30 years and find a lot of these films. At times, I think we tend to get a little too. We tend to depart a little bit from the cultural impact way of telling stories, but in general, I think it is pretty much the DNA of Danish films for the last 30 years, and I think it has pretty much to do with also that we have quite high national admissions.
Okay.
Yeah, these are not just films to be entertained by. These are also films that actually address something, divorce, being not being faithful, harassment in schools, and now kind of the older woman harassing a younger boy.
Okay.
And I think you can find a lot of Danish films that does not have don't have kind of enough cultural impact. But I think when we are best, I think cultural impact is quite high.
Having a cultural impact. This seems to be one of the cornerstones of this industry. And as we are talking about powerful creation, shall we go ask the point of view of the closest partner of one of the most challenging directors of our time? To find the Lars von Trier team, you must get away from the city. The director founded the Thentropa Studios in 1992 with Peter Albeck, a decentralized autonomous company that creates space for new ideas and alternative form of production.
At one point we talked about Thentropa being the place where we produce the film that would not be produced otherwhere.
Okay.
And I think that's part of the truth, of course, because I think that's, of course, if we were not there, some of the same stories would have been produced in other production companies. But I still think there's a truth to it, because we have, from the beginning of this company with Lars von Trier and Peter Ulbeck together, it's been always an approach, I think, to really find the core story of the vision of the director that we worked with. We have always been very director driven.
Okay.
I mean, for us it's very important to have one that really knows what they want to tell. And I also think that we haven't been afraid of the commercial aspect of the film, but believed that if we made a strong story, that the commercial aspect would grow with it.
Okay.
And of course, sometimes we were wrong, but we also, in a lot of times, I think that we were absolutely right, that we could work with those two things together, so that an idea wasn't born as a commercial idea or a project that had to sell internationally, but that our approach was to bring all our stories out in the world, and that they had to have an international aspect in the way that the idea was important for society.
Okay.
So I think that in that way, that's maybe the DNA of Subtitles, that we always believe in the strong idea and the strong director, and from there the film has to take care of itself in a way.
Okay.
This company was founded by Lars von Trier and Peter Olbæk together, and they have, of course, from the beginning been the two parts that were actually very different, but also a very strong unit together, because you had the absolutely king of auteur, Lars von Trier, who wasn't going to do what anybody said and wasn't going to please anyone, any audience, and so on, but was or is a genius in his way of handling the language of the film.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
And then on the other side you had Peter Olbæk, who was a businessman, but also had a strong heart for cinema, but also a businessman that wanted to go bigger and more internationally, and did what he could to make noise out there. So I think the combination of those two kind of created the way that the art meets the market in a way, in all what we are still doing here at Subtitles. For me, the best purpose is when it has an impact on the people that sees it.
Okay.
And with impact, I mean that there are some, of course, it would be nice if it was the whole film, but there are specific elements of the film that stays with the audience a long time after they have seen the film. That can be an image, a story, a character, but something that actually has an impact on the way they look at their own life, the society, the world around them. So I think that's a very, very important task for a film, is to make an impact on the audiences. And then you can discuss what is an impact, because just being entertaining could also be an impact, sure. And I also think that's interesting when I work with some of the more entertaining films, more commercial films that I have done. I always think that that's sometimes a bigger responsibility than to make the very artistic films. That the artistic films often impact the audience very precisely, because it's in a way communicating to the audience that you expect will see it.
So, it appears to us that the Danish cinema success can be found in the way that they challenge the audience, impact the public, without the fear of going too far. But what is the limit to this? Let's take a look at the last Lars von Trier film, The House That Jack Built. All the ingredients seems to be here. A well-known director, a really artistic and entertaining result, a strong message about violence. What could possibly go wrong? Well, The House That Jack Built accumulated a total of 29,467 admissions. It is one of the lowest results of the year. What can we learn from that?
We've been talking a lot about realism, reality. Danish cinema has historically been known for the dogma movement. I mean, it has very much, the quality drama about people. But given given the huge pressure there is on the theatrical window, we also see that if the stories become too depressing, even though it's quality drama, it's really hard to lure the audience. Okay. People are turning a little bit away from that. But then, once you have a film that really, really works, I mean, then the audience is still there. Mm-hmm. Before The Frost, the new Michael Nohr film, it was, of course, in the Cinema Club Denmark. That was a grim tale. It was a good film, but it was a tough story to watch. It was a tough drama. It was really, whoa, this is not feel good. This is feel bad. But it's still, we made it to more than 200,000 admissions. So if you can never hold a good story down, but it's harder to market unless we're able to generate a good word of mouth. I would say that. Right. Then it's easier with the more lighter genres like comedies, family films, etc. Okay. And then you'll always have those directors that are kind of like, trademarks in themselves, like Lars von Trier, Susanne Bier, etc. Yeah. But even Lars von Trier he's been known to a lot of humor, but also very tough films to watch. And we saw House That Jack Built, which is a very good film. Mm-hmm. It made it to 30,000 admissions. I think that's kind of the lowest that Lars has done in many years. Mm. So it's not easy.
I understand.
Yeah. But I think that it only, given that the way the theatrical markets are evolving and the audience need for something to be lighter, to be entertained, to be focused on, know exactly what it is. I think there's also a limit to how many films that can be put into the market that has this thematic base. I would say.
That's also what we're seeing with Danish films that works very well at the box office, is that they are highly conceptual.
Okay.
Highly relatable conceptual films.
All right.
Right now we have a film out that is called The Mother Group. Okay. I don't know if you have that in France. Yeah. No, but here in Denmark we have, when you have a child, you are allocated into a mother group.
All right.
Where you can meet up. It's a bit of a choice of your own. Okay. Of course, it's not mandatory in any way, but a lot of people do it. So then you get into a group of other moms in geographically. Okay. So it's close by where you live, and all the kids are born within 3 to 4 months or something like that.
All right.
So you can share your experiences, blah blah blah, and you can develop relationships and etc.
Okay.
So right now there's of course a movie out that's just an extremely conceptual and relatable film.
Yeah, I understand.
So when they first posted the trailer for that on Facebook, it got 20,000 comments and taggings of everybody, hey, and then of course you go see it with your mother group.
Okay.
So that's an extreme, and I don't think that it's a funny trailer, and there's probably funny moments in the film, but I don't think as such the film as such is necessarily a good film.
I understand.
But it works still as a concept.
Okay, because it speaks to everybody.
It speaks to the target group anyway.
Yeah. Oh yes.
Private policy issues are very important for the Danish people, and I think that we have a very open approach to the everyday problems that people are having. Okay. So we make we are very good at telling those character-driven stories that people can relate to.
Just I understand.
And I think that's actually also why a lot of people actually watch the Danish films, is that they can relate to them.
Okay. Thanks to this.
Because when you are only 5.7 million people, you have to find the things that most people can relate to.
All right. Okay.
Being parents, having love issues, blah blah blah. All these things.
All right.
So I think that film actually in Denmark has an important role there to put voices to those problems.
Okay.
For me, it's kind of funny / interesting when you look at the fact that we want to be as individual as possible as human beings.
Yeah.
Then it is actually quite interesting to see that we are now that's how we want to be perceived,
Okay.
but that's not the reality.
Okay.
The reality is that we are more and more doing the same things. So we all have the same kind of phones.
Right. Yeah. That's right.
We all wear approximately the same kind of clothes.
Mm-hmm.
You don't see, like, I think you could see 20, 30 years ago here in Copenhagen, you would see a lot more punkers, goths,
Okay.
etc. And we apparently also go to see the same films.
Okay. You feel that.
And that is, of course, that is an interesting development in a society where we all kind of want to be more and more individual,
Yeah.
and that's the reality of it is the complete opposite, if you ask me.
That's quite interesting.
And then, but that can change as well with films, of course.
Okay.
I mean, it changed with food,
Mm-hmm.
especially here in Denmark.
Yeah.
I mean, we are now, I guess, when you look at top restaurants and then compared to the size of the country,
Yeah.
I guess we are way up top now. We have some of the best restaurants
Mhm.
in the world, and that was definitely not the case even 20 years ago.
Okay.
So we really embraced the fast food, the
Yeah.
concept restaurants, etc. Now it's the exact opposite, which is, you can say we've gone the complete opposite direction with films.
Okay.
We have gone from being quite diverse to extreme fast food films.
Okay. That's interesting.
That's how I see it anyway.
Extreme fast food films. The diversity of the Danish cinema seems to be reduced by the homogenization of the demand and of the way that people want to be entertained. If Danish cinema is quite known for its challenging movies about sensitive subjects, the new big topics about our society don't all bring people in the dark rooms. The contrast is really clear when we analyze the admissions. If nearly 1 million people went to see the Danish comedy Turned Ninja, only 5,000 went to see The Charmer, a Danish intense psychological drama about Ismail, a young Iranian man who is desperately looking to meet women who can secure its stay in Denmark. A movie related to a political subject that makes the Danish citizen uncomfortable.
But I mean, political subjects, it's tricky. I mean, that's where I would like to see at least a certain group of people going to see these films instead of going to see the Marvel films or the Danish comedies. I mean, when we have a Ken Loach film, that is clearly a political film, an extremely good film, like I, Daniel Blake.
Yeah.
I mean, I would have loved to see more of the left wing of Denmark go see that film. I mean, why not? Why wouldn't you go see a film like that?
Yeah.
And they did to some extent, but I mean, compared to the fact that half the population in Denmark are considering themselves to be, or at least 45 to 50%, I consider themselves to be on the left side of the political spectrum. Very few went to see it, which is also interesting for me. You have all the right opinions.
Yeah.
You consider yourself, I have all, and then when you choose a film, you don't go see the film that could actually broaden your opinions and your horizon. You go see a fucking stupid Danish comedy. That is mind-boggling to me. I just don't understand it. But of course, it's also sometimes just nice to have all the right opinions without actually having to do anything about it.
It's easy, yeah.
Yeah, it's very easy.
I think that would be one of the problems I would focus on, or I'm focused on right now. I think too few films are actually dealing with kind of, current affairs issues.
Okay.
We tend to tell very personal stories, and we tend to tell stories with a very into a very psychological framework. I think we can increase our, we can be better here. But I think actually we are going the right way and have done that for a couple of years. And I think the two films that I mentioned that are in cinemas now this is one is the best reviewed film for 25 years. The other one is the most viewed film for 25 years. I think they are addressing these issues in a more direct way than we usually do. And I think we have had maybe for 10, 15 years, maybe some of the producers have been a little bit afraid of making films about these issues. I think in a misunderstood way they have tried not to offend the public or the audience, and I think it's a big mistake, and I think it shows now.
Okay. The producers have been afraid to offend the audience. This constitutes a major change in the sector. The comfort zone of the consumers is now making the law. We are living in a big international transition, where industry and consumption are more and more international connected. SVOD is crossing borders and language, and the rules are permanently evolving. The evolution is so fast that the investors are being too afraid of putting money on something that will challenge a little bit too much the audience. That is why we are seeing less and less diversity in the entertainment scene, and we finish by watching the same thing, being interested in the same content. But the reality is also that there are more and more investment and demand, and that can't be a totally negative thing. How can cinema evolve in this transition?
The market, the international market, is becoming more and more difficult. It is becoming more and more divided, and it is, I would say, it's radically changing these days. In the old days, I mean, you had your productions, you focused on your home market, you utilized the theatrical windows, the home entertainment, and then you had your international sales agent that hopefully got the film to festivals or sold territory by territory. I mean, that's still a model to work by. I mean, fewer films work that way. In the old days, it was like if your film gets to an A festival like Cannes, Toronto, Berlin, it automatically secured sales. That's not the case anymore. The markets are becoming more divided, and we see a growing appetite, of course, from the subscription video on demand players, especially the worldwides like Netflix and Amazon, and they are more keen to buying the right kind of content and then buying it worldwide. So that's definitely a game changer, and we've seen it happen first on TV series directly produced for Netflix, for instance, here in the Nordic region. But now we're also seeing it happening on feature films, where feature films are actually picked up even before they are produced, and then Netflix acquires the rest of the world. So I think that in a future environment when there's so much need for content, I actually think it's a positive thing for local films, for Scandinavian films, because there's something sexy and trendy about, be very local but go global. And there's a need, in a worldwide audience, there's an understanding of subtitles, there's an interest in the more exotic stuff that might come here from the north. But I also believe that it's a special type of film. It's very genre oriented. It's not your local comedy, it's not necessarily your local family film. That still works locally, but might not work outside the boundaries of Denmark, so to speak.
Okay, so you're not afraid about Netflix in the future? It's just a change.
Well, I think there's always a risk when there's a disruptor in the market. There's always a risk that Nordic film is we've been here since 1906. It's a very traditional based company. There's always a risk in big companies. Are you able to evolve fast enough? Are you able to turn the business around to accommodate the new needs? But in that sense, the film business have always been in the days of transition. The DVD sales peaked in 2006 and has been, declining ever since. We used to say that in 2016 it would be totally gone, but believe it or not, we still sell DVDs. So there's new opportunities popping up. But of course, if you put on like the pessimistic glasses, you see the content being dominated by very few worldwide players like Netflix that are able to dictate the price of the market. And of course that can be a risk. But then I think that Nordisk Film and Egmont is in a good position because we have production, we have we have a combined content area consisting of production and distribution. We have a lot of opportunities. We still have a lot of windows. We're still seeing that people go a lot to the cinemas. When the right content is there, they're buying it digitally. So there are a lot of possibilities still.
Okay.
Even though the turnover is not as much as it was in 2005 when we sold millions of DVDs.
Yeah.
Then I think that it's more important than ever, given what we talked about with the subscription video on demand players, so much content out there, so many TV series, so many movies, that if you can't clearly communicate, what is this? What is the story? If you can't clearly communicate that, if you can't clearly communicate what is it about, why should I go see it when you look at the poster, then you have a problem. I mean, these middle-sized films that were kind of maybe a little bit in between genres, were not that strong positioned, etc. There used to be like a market for those who were in the theatrical business. They used to generate some tickets, but these days that is becoming a harder and harder sell. I mean, I think because the audience have so many possibilities out there, they're also being more picky.
Okay.
And I mean, it's not cheap going to the movies. If you 2 tickets, popcorn. I mean, you want to get return on your investment, so to speak. You want to make sure that you get value for money.
On the talent side, on the creative side, Netflix is making a lot of movies and a lot of series, so that takes up talent, both cast, writers, directors, which makes it more difficult for the independent producers to get projects made, and we live off the independent projects. So in that sense, of course, there is a disruption, and for me, the biggest competition with Netflix is that we are competing about the same time.
Okay,
so I mean, I think here in Scandinavia, people do have quite a lot of money we do have quite good income, and the Netflix takes up here in Denmark an average around 100 Danish kroner per month, which is, I think, the highest in the world for Netflix, but still not something that you will see as that is, I won't get food on the table, I won't pay my bills because of those 100 kroner. And you will probably you still have money to go to the cinemas once in a while, rent a movie, but that's not the money aspect of it is not such a big issue. But the time consumption is a big issue. So if you spend all your time watching series at Netflix, then you don't have time to go to the movies, so you don't have time to rent one of the newest films on iTunes, etc. And maybe you are watching one of our films on Netflix, and that's of course what it's meant to be. So again, they are a partner; they're not we are of course all, including Netflix, we are competing for people's time. And of course some money as well. But I don't think it's expensive to go to the movies. I think, but I don't think renting a film is the same price as it was 10, 15 years ago, or buying it. I mean, it's the same. So. But I think we have sort of hit rock bottom. So it's at least home entertainment, I think, will be growing from here. And we will have more competition in the SVOD sector with Amazon coming in, scaling up probably. Then Disney Plus will probably come at some point. Hulu might come at some point. Time Warner, etc. So then there's going to be a new competition situation. In the SVOD marketplace. So I would say that it has been some difficult years, but we have managed to scale our business accordingly. We're not that many people left. We used to be 250 people sometime before I started, but still. And now I think with the final restructuring that we are doing at the moment, we will probably after the summer be down to less than 20 people in Scanbox across Scandinavia, which is compared to even 10 years ago is
It's really small, really.
yeah, it's dramatic.
Yeah.
But that's what's happened. So yeah, I mean, I think this 19 will probably be another year of getting by and making a small profit. But looking at a lineup for 2020, I'm quite positive, at least for what we have on paper right now.
Okay.
But again, the like I said, it's not Netflix's fault. The main problem is piracy. So, and that's of course an extremely big problem. That's a difficult thing to compete with. The fact that people go and watch your stuff for free.
Okay.
And every time anybody does that, that is stealing.
Mm-hmm.
There's no question about it.
No.
But in Scandinavia, as well as many other territories, even people that you and I would know and would think that they're not people, they would never steal.
Yeah.
They still do it when they're behind the computer, then they think it's okay, that's also extremely interesting.
Yeah.
Why they do that. People with a normal high moral and ethics,
Yeah.
they think it's okay to steal as long as they do it behind a computer screen.
Nothing matters. So you,
Yeah, and that's extremely interesting. Why we think that's okay to steal from because it is pure. They find a lot of excuses for themselves. It's okay, other people do it. It's not that much, blah blah blah. But it is pure theft, and you are a criminal every time you do it. You are a lousy, low-life, fucking scumbag criminal, and that's what I have to say about that. So we're going to try to chase them as much as possible, but the legislation here in Scandinavia doesn't give much. I mean, you are extremely protected as a consumer, which is good in many ways, but in this instance, where you can just steal away without any consequences, it's not good. It's not good for the business, it's not good for the creative people, it's not good for the distributors, and it could potentially kill this business if we don't do something about it.
I think cinema has an advantage is that cinema is also a kind of, it's a, what is it called, a social act, you know.
Okay.
This hasn't only to do with the film, but also doing something together, having discussions together.
Yeah, it's a moment. Yeah.
Yeah. I think we need to stay relevant in the cinema, and we need to stay relevant in another way than we did 20 years ago. I think what actually created a lot of what we see in Danish cinema today was Dogma Way.
Okay.
And these were pretty small stories about relations.
Okay.
And I think what happened since then is that actually the dramas on TV or on the streaming services, you know, they are very good in telling, you know, in storytelling concerning relations. So we need to have, you know, we need to find other ways of storytelling and you know, other topics.
Okay.
Something you can see in television. I think both Queen of Hearts and The Squatted Ninja, they are brilliant examples of this. But you know, it definitely, you know, means that we have to develop other ways of storytelling, because if you can see everything that we can do in the cinema, if you can see it on Netflix, you know, we will have a problem. But I think the business is actually, you know, coping quite well with this with this challenge.
Okay.
I remember one of my colleagues had, I think it was House of Cards that had just premiered on Netflix, and he came back, it was premiering on a Friday, and he came back Monday morning, and he was so frustrated because he'd seen the whole season during the weekend, but no one else had. So he couldn't talk to anyone about anything. So I think that idea of consuming the good stories and having a cultural experience and the social aspect of it, I think that's becoming more and more important. I think that the films are becoming more important in that regard, and I think that the cinema institution in itself, the whole social aspect of going to the cinemas, is becoming more important.
Yeah. So we're to be more connected to.
I think so to the stories that we care about. I mean, why did 330,000 Danes go to see that time of the year? Because everyone could relate to that crazy Christmas, you know, when the whole family comes along, and you're like, oh, I mean, it strikes a nerve with who the Danes are.
It's interesting.
Is cinema then reduced to becoming an object of socialization, a consensual art allowing everyone to interact with those around him? Or the particularities tend to disappear totally? By analyzing the admissions and the next release, this is what we could believe. But it would be completely ignoring the new dynamics and aspiration rising up in the independent scene. Indeed, young directors are emerging with new ambitions to re-challenge the audience by telling new stories about current topics too often pass at the background, and they do it in an innovative way.
They are more, I think they are more interested in telling stories about current affairs or society.
Okay.
I think they are more open to that. Maybe this is also part of a new culture, a more a broader cultural development that I think maybe issues like climate, equality. Some of these issues are just more present in the younger generation than they were in the older generation. I think, and at least I think I can see it in the applications we get and also the films that they make.
Okay.
As a part of our production setup, Nordic Film Production, we have a division called Nordic Film Spring, which is a talent development part of Nordic Film Production. And they just released their first feature film called The Guilty, which has been a massive success that has sold worldwide. It has won a lot of awards here in Denmark. It was so close to be nominated to an Oscar. It made the short list, but didn't quite make the final cut. But that is a really great story about taking young talent, making film from really low amount of money, like 1/6 of what it usually costs to produce a Danish film, and you have a massive hit. So I think that's a really good story, and we have that in Denmark, Nordic Film Spring, but we are trying to, how can we do that in Norway and Sweden? How can we make this as a core part of our strategy as well?
Okay.
Another good example of this new wave of making films is Sons of Denmark by Ulla Salim. Sons of Denmark is set in a not too distant future when Danish politics are more polarized than ever. A new political party, the National Movement, led by the jingoistic Martin Nordal, is predicted to win a landslide victory in the upcoming parliamentary elections. With the one-year commemoration of a major bomb attack in Copenhagen approaching, radicalization is running high. We are following Dakaria, heading down a dangerous path against the neo-Nazi movement's Sons of Denmark. This movie grapples with some of the most sensitive conflict in Denmark and the Western world. Ulla Salim worked on the script on and off for 6 years, and he couldn't help but notice that his forecast was gradually becoming a reality.
Because of course you can argue with the Sons of Denmark that will be a difficult film as well. I mean, that has many. I mean, this is not feel good. This will be feel bad. Exactly, it's heavy, and it probes the viewer and the audience to think about political issues, political statements. What's the status of society? Where are we going, etc. And going back to what I've said before, I think it's important that Nordic film also, it is helping conveying these messages and themes to the society in general, and also helping the talent along.
Okay.
And I think that's why it's an important film for us.
Okay.
Sons of Denmark accumulated a total of 40,000 admissions, which, given that sensitive issue and its challenging direction, remains a very encouraging success. New movements are coming and their ambitions look very interesting for the future of the Danish cinema.
I mean, the film school kind of nurtures this idea of the Danish film school, of the drama, the realistic drama, etc. But then again, we see films that are coming out of new talent, and not necessarily talents that have attended the film school. On the contrary, actually, where people focus the genre on with some very cool means. I mean, look at The Guilty, as I mentioned earlier. I mean, that's taking place in one location. and it's one of the best thrillers I've seen in years, and it has, you know, one main guy and then a woman on the phone, and that's, I mean, it's. I remember reading the script of that one and discussing with the filmmakers, saying that, I mean, I think the script is awesome, but the limitation is that I read it as a book, so I imagine everything that's going on off camera, which is not going on off camera when you see the film. But it didn't make a difference, because you were still, you know, when you watch the films, your mind was still churning, you know, what's happening off camera. So, and then again, a film that's not ours, but which I've seen, called Cutterhead, which is opening, I think, today, actually, about a documentary team going down to document drilling in the metro construction in Copenhagen, and then they are caught down there. And the documentary film team is caught down there with some of the workers, and it's a really cool thriller about, you know, how do you survive something like that, and it's actually a catastrophic thriller, you know, just in some very tight means, and you can actually say the same about The Sons of Denmark in that sense. That's also a genre film. I mean, it says something, but especially the last part is a genre film. It's actually a high concept thriller about, you know, what's happening. So I think I see a movement towards more like clear-cut genre stuff, which I think is very interesting.
Even if the art form evolves, even if the conception is quite different, even if the scale is no longer the same, cinema proved to us its ability to embrace the change. By its history, by its passionate actors, and by its innovative movements, the Danish cinema industry remains an amazing subject of study, a quite interesting prism to look at in order to understand a bigger meaning transcending the camera, a unique connection with its society. The Danish dream keeps some mysteries from us, but it is still a source of inspiration, and I have one last question to ask the Danes. What can we expect for the future?
10 years ago, we sold the same amount of theatrical tickets in this country as we did last year. So somehow, you know, cinema is still quite strong.
But what I've also learned is that one of these pillars can never stand alone, because then you'll often fail. If you base your decision 100% on historical data, you'll fail. If you base it 100% on testing, you also fail. And that's the beauty, I think, about movies, that it is so. Was it William Goldman who once said nobody really knows anything? I mean, at the end of the day, what is it I do? I'm a qualified guesser.
Okay.